So we ended, if we can bring it right back together, talking about what quantitative and qualitative data is and the difference. Can y'all do a super quick review of the other 6 terms? And we don't even have to say what they are, but we talked qualitative, quantitative, norm and criterion referenced, formative and summative, and was that it? What'd you say? Qualitative and quantitative? Okay. Did we say all of them? Validity and reliability. Yes, validity and reliability. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to model just real quickly for you what type of framework might I model when you hear the something model or the something framework. Oh, yes, what? Gradual release. You've heard it, right? I mean, it's something that you're going to get in Reading Academy over and over. So, what we have, and if you'll go to your next page on your handout, you're going to see that it's, come on, I know you're going to work. Okay, so page 9, and what we're going to do is not exactly what it says up here because I'm going to model gradual release. So if you see 4 different scenarios on there, and you know that I'm going to model gradual release, what do you think is going to happen on that first scenario? I'm going to model it for you. I'm going to share my think aloud, right? What do you think we're going to do on number 2? We're going to do it together. I'm going to ask some questions. You can ask me some. We can talk about it a little bit. What do you think we're going to do on number 3? Not completely independent yet, but almost. Group work, y'all do, okay? It's going to go from me modeling to we do together to a small group or partnering, so you still don't have to be by yourself, but I'm going to step out and just listen and watch. And then the 4th one is going to be independent. You're doing it completely on your own, and then each time we'll show answers, okay? Super, super easy. So, since I'm modeling, I'm going to read that first one. And this is what it says. A teacher administered the TxCee assessment at the end of the year, and as soon as I hear end of the year, the first word that comes to my mind is summative, but I got to keep reading. In order to determine her students' overall growth. I'm still thinking summative. Use the class report on page 2 of your assessment handout to determine the type of assessment. Okay, so we're finally going to go to that assessment report that we haven't really opened, and I'm going to open it up, and I'm cheating a little because I'm going to look right over here, and I'm going, oh, I see words at the top. So they're being tested on vocabulary, listening comprehension, letter sounds, blending, and spelling. So that is content that they're being tested on. So I'm still thinking it's end of year. She never says anything about doing something with it. She's simply determining their overall growth. So I feel certain that it is a summative criterion reference based on those standards at the top, and because I see nothing but numbers. It looks like student 1 got 5 out of 16, then 7 out of 16. I don't see anything qualitative on here. I see nothing but numeric. So I'm going to say that I believe this is a criterion reference, summative, quantitative, all on the right. And I didn't write down, I'm not modeling by writing it down because I just shared my think aloud with you. Are y'all good with that? Okay, so let's move to the second one, but first we're going to do this. This assessment is criterion reference. You agree? Summative, yes. Quantitative, yes. Any questions about that? Okay. Here we go. Who will read this one with me? We're going to do this one together as a whole class. So will someone read this out loud for all of us to listen to? Can I stop you right there? And can we, just as we're going through it, so as a group, let's think about our thinking. So right there, what hints, and we're not going to say for sure, but what hints do we have from what has been read to us so far? In order to individualize instruction, that is a pretty good clue that this is what? Formative. Would y'all agree? Does anybody else see something? Oh, okay. Student specific. Okay, wait. Regularly. Okay, she does this regularly with her students. So I would agree. Regularly is another clue that this is probably formative. It's ongoing, right? Okay, who would find something else in that first sentence that's maybe a hint? Agree. Student-specific grade level standards. Who would share what you think that is in reference to? If it's on, I just heard it right here. Was that you, Hector? I couldn't tell. Yes? Frank? Mm-hmm. Criterion referenced, right? Because it's on these specific standards. So we're going to read more, but so far we're thinking. Who will tell me what we're thinking so far? Let's do it together. Criterion and formative. Is there anything else you're thinking at this point? Okay, my reader, would you continue reading or call on someone else to do the next sentence?
One of the students, Lillian, is working on interpreting skills. She asked Lillian how the main character is feeling and what text evidence helps her.
Are you having any hints? Anybody having from those two sentences? Sounds qualitative, right? It also sounds criterion referenced again, doesn't it? Because it's about a specific content. Okay, Dawn, will you continue reading or call on someone from there?
As Lillian answered, Mrs. Jones writes down notes of what Lillian is saying so that she can remember the conversation the next time they meet.
What now? She's writing down notes. What does that tell us this would be? Qualitative. Would you agree? We don't see anything numeric, and we haven't been given an assessment to look at to tell us differently. So someone tell us how we would classify this assessment based on the scenario. What 3 labels would we give it? Criterion, reference, formative, and qualitative. Are y'all good with that? Okay, let's check ourselves. Criterion, reference, formative. Whoa, are y'all feeling smart? How's the old self-efficacy when you're thinking about assessments in this way? Y'all feeling pretty good? All right. This one, what I would like for you to do so that you really can have a conversation is please work in only groups of 2 or 3. Don't do it by yourself. But it's kind of hard if there's 7 or 8 of you. So break up into groups of 2 or 3 and work through assessment number 3 scenario, please. Will your table leader give me a signal, raise your hand when you feel like y'all have made your decisions, please? Good. Okay, I agree. Between which ones? Okay, good. Let's remember to discuss it then. Norm is when basically ranking students and giving them a percentile of how they do amongst others is norm. Could be if you're looking at the percentile, when you look at the percentile of a state test, how they rank, then it's normal. But the test is created to be criterion. Like if you took all those scores and you put your kids, if you said, okay, I'm going to look at next year's STAR test and I'm going to put them in order, then you would be ranking them. But it's created to be a criterion because it's based on Texas standards. People can interpret it for percentile scores, but really they do scale scores. Okay, so let's pull in for a moment. The first question I want to ask y'all is, I think this was interesting to use this one when I chose to do gradual release. I think this is a good y'all do. Would y'all agree? Why is this one a good example? Y'all stay with me, this is important. Because if it's simple, is it really a good y'all do? What's the best y'all do type activities? You have to think and talk. It's not just straightforward, so simple, but and did this one raise some discussion with your partner or table? I had several tables go, oh no. So here's what we want to talk about. After you've done the y'all do, the whole point of that is to feel safe and work together and then create an environment where you can then ask your questions before we go to independent. So what are some of the questions, thoughts right now that you're processing? You can even tell me, well, I'm sure about this part, or I'm really not sure about this. Y'all can do either one. What are you thinking so far about this? Something you're like, I know it would be blank, or I'm not sure on this. And we're going to talk out loud because this is the time to learn from each other, even though it's a whole group. Okay, you're saying, say the first part, I'm sorry.
We know it would be formative and qualitative.
Formative and qualitative. Let's take those one at a time, okay? Which one you want to do first?
Formative.
Okay, so I've heard, we know that it would be formative. Tell me what part of this scenario.
Because she gives regular feedback.
Do y'all agree? It's formative because she gives regular feedback. What else are you thinking?
Well, we put summative. We agree with that. We put summative because it's passion on the video, and the video is going to happen in after also.
Okay? So do you see how it can be, what are you thinking, Melanie? She's saying, we're saying it's summative because it's the video at the end. Okay, so I would agree that everything that y'all have said here is the same thinking that I had, okay? But here is what, in talking to TEA, the answer is, there are little pieces of something here that make it feel formative because she gave them feedback, right? But she didn't give them feedback on the assessment. She just did it while they were rehearsing. Kind of like the y'all do. So right now I'm not grading you. I'm not going to grade you till you do the independent one. But while y'all are practicing, I'll give you a little bit of feedback while you're going. But I'm not putting a grade on that feedback. Okay? So could we agree that this is why sometimes it's not cut and dry? Because a good teacher would give feedback, right? You give feedback all the time. but it didn't say that the teacher did anything with that feedback. Did it change the teacher's instruction? They gave the feedback and then the students did the video, right? So if it was at the end of the unit and the students produced this video and we didn't hear that the teacher did anything as a result of viewing the videos, what would that video be? A summative assessment, right? Okay, and then the next thing y'all said was, did you say criterion or, qualitative? Do we see anything here about numbers? A numeric score, okay? So the feedback was verbal. So obviously if there's gonna be feedback on the video and there's no number, we're gonna say qualitative. What about norm or criterion? Criterion because it's based on what? On the skills. Now, if the teacher had given a score to each one of those videos and then ranked them and put them on a bell curve and said, this is your grade, yeah, then it would have been quantitative. Okay, are y'all ready to do one all by yourself? Oh, let's check answers. Criterion reference, y'all are right. Summative, right. Qualitative, you're right. Here is assessment number 3, and 4, and it tells you to go to the handout so that you can see it in your assessment packet. Look at that assessment. Read it all by yourself. Score it. Do y'all need more time? You good? Okay, now play a game with me. Can I have y'all close, just turn your paper over or close it for a moment? And who would like to role play with me? A table that will role play with me. Who will? Okay, great. All right, you guys listen up, please. Turn your papers over and listen to this conversation. And you guys are going to have to talk real loudly, okay? All right. So, boys and girls, I want you to switch papers real quickly. Turn your paper, pass it to the right. Okay, and we're looking at number 4. And the answers are criterion reference. Check if it's right, put an X if it's not. Summative. Check if it's right, put an X if it's not. Oh, that's assessment number 3. So sorry, y'all. We're on 4. We're on 4. I messed up. I gave you the wrong key. Assessment number 4. This is norm referenced. Check it if it's right. Put an X over it if it's wrong. Formative. Check if it's right, X if it's wrong. And quantitative. Check if it's right, X if it's wrong. Okay, now, please, Christy, starting with you, would you please tell me how many 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 3 were correct? Okay, so please put 3 out of 3 on there and 100%. How about yours? 3 out of 300%. 3 out of 300%. One out of 3, put a 33 on that paper. How about yours? So how many were correct? Okay, so put a 67 on that. Okay, so if we're going to do a team grade here, you guys, we can do the math. We have 300s, we have a 67, and we have a 33. And so overall in the grade book, I could do the math, I'll get it exactly, but y'all have about an 80 on this as a team assignment. But the other thing, I might just do a percentile rank, and I might just go ahead and put the hundreds on the bell curve over here, the 33 and the 67 there. And so the 33, you're going to fall in that lower 5 percentile. 100, y'all are going to fall in that top 30 percentile, and 67, you're going to be in about the 40th percentile. So when you go home, I want you to think about the grade that you made on this, your percentile rank, and the score that you made. And then I'll make sure I get that in the grade book, okay? All right. Next group. How'd that feel? Okay. Who wants to go next? You will. Okay. All right. So let's talk about this over here. So when we look at this, the first one it says up here is norm referenced. Tell me what y'all think about that. Do you agree or disagree with this? Did y'all have anything different? Y'all all agreed with it? Okay. Well, why did y'all tell me how you know it's norm referenced? Okay. Okay. It's got the percentile, so the students are ranked according to their percentile. Okay. What else did y'all find out about this one? Sounds like y'all really know the difference between. Okay. There were numbers, so you did quantitative. Did anybody do qualitative on this? Did you see any elements of anything qualitative? What would you have seen if it was qualitative? What do you think? Observational. So I'm seeing that you really do seem to feel pretty comfortable between quantitative and qualitative, and that quantitative is what? And qualitative is words, observations, okay. Now, the norm and criterion, what are you thinking about that one? Okay, so if it's a percentile comparing them to their peers, what does that tell us about what type of test this might be? What do we know about norm and criterion? Could be on a certain set of skills, right? And so I think what both of y'all are saying has merit, and that typically that's our high stakes test, but you're both right. So what did we see evidence of here? What did we see evidence of here? Was this about comparing students and putting them in a percentile, or was it on a specific set of standards that we can name? So being on reference. How'd y'all feel about this? Okay, does that make sense to you? All right, so guys, listen up, and I know that was long. I hope you were listening. When I leave here just talking to them, first of all, I love that you felt safe saying it. Did it feel threatening? I feel like I know what y'all have. I've made a little check mark here that even though I've heard that now you get norm and criterion, that's my little check mark that I'm going to do qualitatively to come back later and check and make sure you're solid with that. But I could leave this table feeling like, I think they have a pretty solid understanding. I'm going to make sure that I check back on the norm and criterion. Did I give them a number? Did you feel shamed? Did y'all feel shamed? Yes. Purposefully, yes. I mean, I was being ridiculous. And I know y'all wouldn't be that way, but I was trying to make the point between how you respond to something can slam or support. You know I love y'all. They said it was norm referenced because they gave students a percentile rank. They ranked the students according to how many they got right. Okay, so now y'all tell me why do you think, or how do you see any of this Assessment 101 stuff that we've gone through so far? If it's not going to at least bring some level of understanding or thinking about what you do with data and assessments, it's all been for naught. If what we've talked about this morning under Assessment 101, these terms, the definitions, what they mean, the purpose behind them, if it doesn't somehow impact your instruction moving forward with assessments and how you look at data, then we wasted our morning. Okay? So it's okay if you're thinking, no, it's really not going to. That's okay, you can share that as well. Or if you think that there is a nugget of something that has made you think about what you do with assessments and what you do with data and how you respond to it, all of those things we've talked about, I'd like for y'all to share out with each other. Anything you're thinking. Okay, so we've done all this Assessment 101 stuff, big deal. How is that going to impact what you do with your students in your classroom? What do you think, Susan? Yes, using one test one time for one thing and then go away. So I like two things. I know y'all probably weren't able to totally hear that, but two good points that Susan brought up is the whole thing about old data. Old data is old data, right? You don't know if it's current unless the student has been currently assessed. And the other one is that we have the choice about using a test formatively or summatively. Just in the small interactions that we do, or something that we create that's on pencil and paper. How else do you think this information could? I'm not holding you to it to say, oh, I agree to do blah, blah, blah. How could this new learning impact what you do in your classroom? Yes. Super insightful. Good for you. That's important learning. Anybody else have any thoughts about how it might impact what you do moving forward? Taking the small incremental steps. Yeah, you've got your eye on the prize, but yeah, and celebrating along the way. I don't want to leave anybody out if there's something that you have realized today. I just realized maybe I could, or maybe I'll try, or I might blank. Any others? Okay, we will move forward then. This, as the title says, is simply an overview. A few more terms, and you know we're setting the stage for getting a level playing field with our understanding around this assessment stuff. I don't think anything up there is new to you. Screening, diagnostic assessments, progress monitoring, and a special ed evaluation. I'm going to jump to here to show you that. No, that is not. And it's really funny because the literacy coach, it was actually Clarissa, said that when she did day one, that this particular slide, people really wanted a copy of that slide. So one, it isn't, I don't know why the overview's not in there, but if you want to take a picture of this, or if it's really important to y'all that I send that to you, because I am going to go back to it in a second, but that is not in there, okay? But I want to go to that, then I want to go to this, and let you see how that formal evaluation is pulled out of those four. And remember that formal evaluation is pulled out, and then let's go back to these and talk at your table about why it might be pulled out based on the definition and examples. The one that was pulled out was a special education evaluation. While all four of those are types, it pulled out the bottom one by itself. Yes? I seriously, that was who I just talked to. Me, and I forwarded to you. We had asked numerous times, and I can't tell you why they haven't done it. I cannot tell you. It was, no, to remove diverse learners. Remember? And I apologize, I don't know how I guarantee you leaders and coaches against the document for supporting diverse learners. Okay, let's have a couple of suggestions. Why would special education be pulled out, that evaluation, from these other three? There's something different about it than the other three. Yes?
If I'm not totally confident, but is it that the screening or that the other three are assessing the particular skill or standard in that child's ability, and the special ed evaluation is just addressing their special edness?
Yes, that absolutely is right, Jessica. Yes. There are several things that we can say about this that are true, and that's absolutely one of them. Is there anything else you're thinking? Can you administer screenings for your students? Can you do a quick phonics screener? Can you do a diagnostic assessment? Can you do an ORF, an oral fluency assessment? Can you progress monitor your kids? Can you administer a special education evaluation? No. What's one of the main differences between the three and the one? Absolutely, absolutely. Those three are what you can do and what you can choose. And those need to be done, most likely, before the other would happen. But hear me clearly on this, and you'll see us hear something in a video later this afternoon. It is possible that those things don't happen, check, before going to that fourth one. In an extreme, where is Lisa? Where's my Lisa? Yes, right? There are times when that needs to happen. Do not pass go. or whatever. Okay? But those first three, I want you to think about as your own responsibility. They serve different purposes. You would do them for different students at different times for different purposes. The way that you would respond to them would determine whether you used it formatively or summatively. If you did these and then ranked your kids in class order, you would be using it as norm referenced. So you get to choose what you do with them, okay? Screening. When you think of screening, will anyone just pop out? When I think of screening, I think this, because I have a term, it's 2 words that I always think of. Come on, I have to think of something. When someone says, have you screened your students? When you screen your students, we're going to administer a screening. What's the purpose of a screening? Because if you're going to do it, you should know why you're doing it, because it has a specific purpose. One purpose. To see if there's a problem, and I'm going to say yes and no to identify a struggle. Supports teachers in determining a student's risk for reading difficulty. I'm going to tell you my word is red flag. Red flag. A screener may do nothing more than raise a flag and go, caution, caution, this score's pretty low. Or it may go, this kid's good to go. It may give you that feeling. So when you screen, just like guys, don't you through your insurance sometimes get that thing where you can go for a health screening? Doesn't it make you kind of feel like it's all good? Did they ever give you a prescription or do something? Or do they say, you might contact your provider, blah, 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 about, or your blood pressure's here. You might, when you're at the grocery store or Walgreens, check it a few times. A screening does nothing but give you this overall, things look pretty good, things really do look great, or I think we may have a problem here, Houston. That's what a screener is for. So you tell me, who should be screened? You know the answer to this. Every student. Every student. Now, a screener is not going to unravel that rope for you guys. Scarborough's reading rope, it's not that detailed. It's only going to raise a red flag. Okay? So remember that. These are some of the good things about it. See how it just says determining a student's risk for. Because in a screener, a student could have computer problems like I said earlier. And then you could find out later when you test them just yourself, they're fine. They've got this. It was probably just blah, blah, blah. So a screener is not the end to all. It's to test the waters. Do any kids bubble to the top as high performers? Do any kids raise a caution flag for you? That's what a screener does. They should be short, quick, and easy to administer. Because all you're looking for is what's the overall climate here of this learner when it comes to blank, okay? Should not be long, should not take your instructional week. A dyslexia screener for KN1, that has to happen now, right? Okay, who takes that dyslexia screener? All kinder and first. Why would the state say that all KN1 students are going to take a dyslexia screener? Because we know all kids are going to be that? What does it do? Could early identify, but in of itself, and this is the important point I want to make, could the screener in of itself absolutely identify yes or no? Remember what it does? Red flags in case a student might be at risk. So it's just one of those things that makes you go, I got to dig further. Or, I don't think I have to dig further. I get to celebrate, okay? So It's not something that should be used to report specifics to parents. It is for you to go, let me see where this kiddo is, okay? Because there's further work to be done for some students. What makes sense when you think about words we've talked about? If a doctor or just an insurance somebody, whatever, at Walgreens, does a screener for you, and they kind of caution you, you might want to get this blood pressure looked into. Who are you going to go to? Back to that same screener? You're going to go to a doctor who will then give you a diagnosis, right? And the doctor's going to do that because he's going to dig further. More tests, more questions, and that's just what we do. We screen to get an overall. When the red flag comes up, then we go to diagnostic testing to go, because we want to unravel that rope. All the screener tells us is this kid ain't over here in that green box. We don't know why, but they're not. Okay, and then it says they're usually timed. A screener is. Why might they be timed? Any idea? Y'all are getting quiet this afternoon. About to pull out the candy. They're quick. It's not something that kids should labor over. If it's a screener and a kid is struggling and taking a long, long time with something, what does that tell you? Come on, y'all. This isn't an answer that's on the screen. If you're doing a screener and a kiddo is sitting there quiet and struggling and not answering, or they don't know it. It's frustrational. That tells you right there, okay? If they are really struggling with a screener, that's an indicator. You just screened that they are not comfortable with this content. We're going to have to dig in further, okay? Don't make screeners more than they are. There you go. Provide red flag warnings of possible reading difficulties. Okay, so let's look at benefits. Wouldn't you like to know that at the beginning of the year and through the year, middle year? Who may really still be struggling? Good predictors of future reading ability, can be administered to the whole class in a relatively short time frame. It's quick, okay? And the limitations, it doesn't tell you why, okay? It's not that specific. It can potentially over-identify, okay? You've had that happen. I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with teachers who say, Jody, but it was the clicking and it was the mouse. I'm telling you, when you come in the classroom and see these three, they know all their letters, they know all their sounds, they just are clicking. So sure, it's not the end to all. We don't want to use it that way, okay? We just want it to give us this overall view. And it will not identify all who may struggle. You know how you have the, false positives? You know, they could have guessed right. Okay? So a screener just gives you an overall view. Fluency. What do y'all remember about that bridge from, I'm going to make you think way back, see if anybody remembers it. It was in Reading Academy, and then we did it again in October, and there was this graphic. And it had something here and something here, and then it had a big bridge. Do you remember that graphic? We went over it a few times. You may not. But I'm telling you, the bridge was fluency. And fluency was the bridge that went between, remember, word recognition and comprehension. Okay? Because your fluency, and we talked about, oh yeah, it's a two-way bridge. That was a new learning for me. That's why I remember it. Because it wasn't just, with word recognition, you have to get really good at fluency so you can comprehend. It was both ways. You may be orally comprehending a lot, but your fluency could be impacting, okay? So I'm going to give y'all a choice. I'm not sure which way you're going to go on this at all. But we have about 3 or 4 more slides, and then I'm going to ask you what you want to do. So this is kind of interesting, and I know our primary teachers will be like, yeah, talk to me, I already know. But our more upper level teachers, sometimes this is a real quick place possibly you need to go, because I think this is really powerful. that letter naming in KN1 and letter sound in KN1 and single word decoding of real and nonsense words and oral reading fluency. Those are milestone markers in KN1. Let's be honest, we kind of forget about them, except maybe fluency a little bit, but we kind of forget about them by the time we're in, for sure, 4th and 5th grade. And we don't even think so much about fluency, we're thinking more about comprehension. Would you agree? For the most part? Okay. Look at this. I had to read that twice because I was like, wait a minute, did they make a mistake? But read that, please. I see Lisa over here going, yeah. And you've had a lot of experience with that, right? People who have worked with reading intervention or primary students a lot, I typically get that same like, well, yeah, duh. But those of us who were intermediate teachers or secondary, did y'all know that? Something as simple as them being able to do that. So let's go back to that Scarborough's reading rope, and here's our green thing over here. And remember, I think it was blue at the top and yellow at the bottom, and yellow at the bottom was all that word recognition, which was letters and all of that. If that yellow rope somehow is frayed or snaps or isn't correctly intertwined, so think how powerful that is, that indicator for future reading success. I think that just was powerful to me. Okay, so here we go. Students need to be able to fluently, and this is just K1, we're going over fluency for K and 1, and then we're going to jump into 2 in that. Okay? So they need to be able to name each letter correctly, taking no more than 3 seconds per letter. Again, I think many educators, and self-included, and especially people with anxiety, don't ever like the word time. It just kind of has a negative connotation. Would you agree? I sort of mentioned that this morning. But when there is a purpose for it, there is a purpose for it. Why might we say no more than a 3-second pause? If your brain is going to have to read a word, it's doing it fast, but you have to know those letters, and you have to know those sounds, and you have to know how to blend, and you have to know how to do it like this. And when you can't read. Excellent. Will you say that out loud? Yes.
I have students that I can see it in their head, they see the entire alphabet before they know the letter D. So they know it in their own way, but not enough to put it all away.
Do you want to know mine that comes to mind? I agree with you. Like if someone says, Jody, what's Thursday in Spanish? Do you know what I have to say? Jueves. I don't know it like this. I have to do that very same thing. We know people have to do that with math. What's 6 times 7? Some people are going to say 42. Some really, we know they're not. You know, so the whole automaticity thing is important and helpful. And so let's be very logical about it. If kids don't have it, what do? Practice. Practice it. Practice that one piece. I want y'all to keep thinking about the yellow strings and the blue strings. And being a doctor diagnosing which yellow string is frayed, which blue string has not come out there yet. Okay? You want to find it, and you want to fix that one string so that the rope is solid and connected. Yes, Frank? Right, the fluency, and we're going to see what we're about to do with fluency because y'all are going to choose. Okay. So let's just look at this. I think you'll agree. But fluency, what is it made up of? Do y'all remember? Some of this is review. I'll tell you A and P. Say it again. Accuracy and prosody, okay? So here we go. We're automaticity, accuracy and rate. That's the timed piece. Being accurate and quick makes it automatic. And that impedes or enhances a student's fluency. Agree? Okay, then prosody, and I'll be honest, you guys, I didn't learn this word till really late. But what does prosody have to do with? Remember? Expression, phrasing, pausing, intonation, expression, and appropriate phrasing. So, you know how sometimes, this is what I want us to think about diagnosing. Hear me on this clearly. You know how sometimes you'll just say, I know a good writer when I see it. I know a good reader when I hear it. Is that true? Can't you just hear a student read and you're like, that's a good reader? If this student over here is not a good reader, it's not enough to just say keep reading, right? We need to diagnose. Where is the concern? Is it with their fluency? Is it with their prosody? If it's with their prosody and they're reading choppy, I'm not really yet, I don't know. Am I going to work with the appropriate phrasing? Do I want to teach them about expression? About what happens when there's a question mark, when there's an exclamation? But that's when you have to diagnose. And I know this will make sense to you, but if you don't know the parts of what a good reader needs to do, then you don't even know what to look for, right? And so, an ORF, which is an assessment that you give to check a student's fluency. I'm giving you the answer right now. Does everybody need that? No. Everybody needs a screener. But which students would you then administer an ORF to? The students that have a red flag, and when you hear them read, it's choppy or slow, or you know they're not fluent. So then you administer the ORF, which helps you look at their words correct per minute and their prosody, and then you can further diagnose. It seems like the biggest problem is here. Okay? Do you see how we're thinking more and more kind of like a doctor? Like, don't just say we know there's a problem through the screening and drop it and keep doing what we're doing. Let's take enough time to dig further and find out where the need is and address and support that one thing. Yes. Well, I don't think this is called an ORF. I'm about to show y'all. We're almost there. Frank, you do it again, buddy. He's really good at that. He asks me questions remember when we had a makeup day, because they had their celebratory big wedding in California, we had a makeup day, and all day long Frank would say, well, Jenny, what about, and I'd be like, 2 slides. What about 1 more slide? Okay, little side note. So this is another one. Remember when y'all said, hey, we don't have that. I do not know why these 2 slides aren't in your handouts, but they're not. So if you want your phone to take a picture, but you might not need it. It's just about accuracy, rate, and prosody. Okay, and I'm going to give, I always think in metaphors, but I'm not going to tell you about my one time. That's going to get us too off track. But I do want you to imagine having a health screening and there's a red flag possibly about your blood pressure. And you go to the doctor and the doctor says, well, I want to talk to you about several things. First, let me talk to you about your diet. And you get all this information about what you need to do about your diet. Now I want to talk to you about your weight. Now I want to do your body mass index and I want to give you these numbers. The other thing that I want to talk to you about is your exercise. So let's talk about your exercise and what you're doing and what you should do. And I want to talk here about your sleep. And then now tell me about all the other medications that you're taking. And so, okay, now what I want you to do is go and do all of that. All of that. Change your life. Fix your blood pressure. Do all of that. And there are several medications you could take. So what I'm gonna do, because I know this is expensive, so I'm gonna go to my closet over here, and I've got several different blood pressure medications, and I'm just gonna give you 5 or 6 of those samples, and I want you to take those and figure out which one makes you feel the best, and then we can talk about if you wanna get the prescription for that. So, okay, been very helpful, right? That was really sarcastic, and you know I don't want to insult y'all. I'm talking about myself as much as anyone. But think about when a kiddo's struggling, and either you don't diagnose or you just give them everything. How helpful is that? I'm just going to give you everything. Come to a small group. We're just going to keep doing stuff. Okay? We're better than that, right? We can be more diagnostic than that. I know we can. I didn't do it, so it's real easy for me to say. I did not do it. I did not know how to. I mean, it was a whole 16 years ago when I was a 4th, 5th grade teacher, and I did not know how to teach reading. Those poor kids. I could teach them how to love it. Who was talking about that? This morning we were talking about AR and loving reading. Anyway, but I didn't help the strugglers well, understandably. I hate that I didn't, but I didn't know how. Okay, so here's oral reading fluency. The basics are that you listen to them read aloud, you collect information about what 3 things? Say it, come on. Accuracy, rate, and prosody. And then you use it to make instructional decisions about how to help students improve their reading fluency with the overall goal of getting to that green box. Okay? So we're just going to look at this very quickly because it's going to be in your handouts in a minute. Will you look in your assessment packet at page number 6? And this is where I need y'all to be super honest with me, because in a moment I'm going to give us choices. And I feel like I kind of know which way we should go, but I don't want to beat a dead horse. How many of you have administered an ORF before? Will you just raise your hand, an oral reading fluency assessment? Well, then I think I probably need to answer that for us. I think we need to do it. Yes? Yes? Okay. Okay. So, when you check for accuracy, I'm giving you a quick review. You're going to have all this in your handouts. But is the number of words read correctly divided by? So if at the end of your 2 minutes the student read 78 words and you had marked 8 errors, how many words correctly did they read? You marked 8 errors out of 78. They read 70 correct. So there would be 70 over 78. And what that percentage comes to would be their accuracy percentage. Okay? I know I said that fast, but I think y'all know that, and it's on the paper. So that's one thing you do when you administer the ORF. And you use the accuracy percentage to determine whether they're at independent instructional or frustrational reading level. Is that a norm referenced assessment? Based on criteria. Good job. Okay, so look at our activity. In September, a 2nd grade student reads 69 words correctly out of 75. Maybe you're quick. Maybe you want to get your phone out and turn on your calculator. If they read 69 out of 75 correct, what is their accuracy percentage? Did y'all hear that? If you haven't done it yet, what is it? 92%. That's their accuracy percentage, all right? So, if it's 92%, does that tell us where they are, frustrational, instructional? No, it just gives us a number, right? So if you tell a parent it's 92%, what are they going to think? Wow, last year's teacher said they were struggling. You are a miracle worker, right? Okay, so let's look here. I know this is small, but it is also in your, it's in your packet. Y'all see it right there, correct? So, ooh, that's weird. where would 92% fall on this? Instructional. So that wouldn't actually be that they can read that text at an independent level, right? Because independent is 95 to 100. So, in that text that they're reading, whatever that level is, would be what you could use with them in a small group, but it's not what you would give them to read independently. Are we good with that? Okay. So, after determining accuracy, we can determine the reading level. Simple, short test. In a 1-minute reading, you subtract errors from words. That's what we did. And that will give correct words per minute. If a student, this is redundant. I'm not saying it again, because that's what we just did. Okay? Now, this one, I don't think it will necessarily be controversial, but I can almost predict that there are going to be a couple of questions that are raised. And when you have one, I hope you be the person to go, wait a minute, now why? Because that's how we'll find out why. Remember, this is not a complete running record. It is a fluency test. So we have decided that the student's fluency appears to be a concern, and we want to find out more. So what it says on this ORF is that we mark with a slash. That means when the student's reading, they have the passage in front of them, you have it in front of you. As they read, when you see any of these things happen, you put a slash on top of that word. So, if they substitute a word, you're going to have it in front of you. It won't be hard. If they mispronounce, omit a word, hesitation's greater than 3 seconds. If it's a little 2-second pause, forget it. If they stumble for 4 seconds and then the teacher has to tell them the word, you put a slash over it. Okay? Yes, sir? Well, that would be a little bit difficult, but some of those things, that does happen. They'll pronounce them differently, maybe SH, CH, or all kinds of things that they could pronounce differently. If that's the way you know they speak, I would not mark that as an error, but it might be something that you make a anecdotal, qualitative comment about to work with them, okay? But if it's not impacting their fluency, okay? Because remember, this is for fluency. Okay, then, and reversals. Then look, it says, note that in some measures, there it is, mispronunciations of proper, so for example, that, you know, if it was, I don't know why the name Violet came to me, but if they said, you know, a child's name was Violet, and they said, Violet, or, you know, okay. That's maybe not. And then look what you don't mark. This is interesting. I know you'll find the answer to it. And I'm not going to tell you. We're going to have to think. When we're checking for fluency, if they insert a word or repeat a word or self-correct, we ignore that and go on. Why? Dawn? So that's not an error. But what about if they insert a word and that word just wasn't there? But let's think about this, the meaning, okay? And I'm right with you because we might go, well, yeah, but that's going to impact their comprehension because they put a different word in there, right? We're not testing on an ORF for anything but what? Fluency. You have decided that fluency is what you want to assess. So I'm going to tell you now. If I say a word 3 times, what is that going to do to the number of words I'm able to read in 1 minute? What does it do? It already takes words away from me. Do Do you understand what I'm saying? If there were 78 words and I said rough, and I said that 4 times, that's already going to keep me from getting to probably 4 more words. So it already impacted my score. When I do things that take time away from me to be able to read more words per minute, I'm already negatively impacting my score. If I insert a word, that pretty much takes a word away from me that I would have been able to read at the end. So if we mark insertions or repetitions or self-corrections on an ORF, a fluency assessment, you're double penalizing kids. Because when they do that, they're taking time away from themselves already, which is going to lower their score. So then you double whammy them if you mark those. So there's no need to mark those. Does that make sense? Because that's kind of a biggie. Because on some reading inventories you might, but for fluency, you only mark those. Okay, so here we go. We're going to practice. If you'll go to page 10, please. And we're going to kind of, well, no, I guess what we'll do is a tiny gradual release. So let's look at the very first one. We know those are the things that we're going to count, right? So when the text says, she saw the cat, and the student says, she saw a scary cat. I'm going to model this for you. The student didn't say a, they substituted the word the for a. Would you agree? So that is one substitution, right? So right there in kind of error, I would write sub. Then I look up at the top and I say, do we mark that? Yeah, we do. We mark when they do a substitution. Then the next thing they did was they said the word scary. Scary is what? An insertion. Do we count insertions? We don't count insertions. So that one would not count. So in that first one, how many errors is it? 1 error. Okay? I'm going to do this kind of quickly because I want us to get through to administer it. At your tables, what I want you to do is go through this, either by yourself or with a partner. We're not going to actually, I know that it would be best practice if we do gradual release here as well. But I don't think you all need that today. I think you can go through it, and then I'm going to pop the answers up and you can self-check. The other thing I'm going to do for y'all is put them up. Wait a minute, let me see. No, I can't. It doesn't have them here. Yes, ma'am. Yes. It's because this is fluency, and that's the difference. There is enough other people who can fix this, because whenever they insert a word, that's how it does about fluency, so we don't count those. The double reading, because in a normal reading inventory you do. Yep. It's different. Exactly. Okay, here we go. I'm going to read them out quickly so you can do a self-check. Okay? Number 1, the errors are substitution, and yes, it counts as an error. Insertion, no. The second line, substitution, yes. Third one, self-correction, no. The hesitate, right. So 3 was self-correction, no. And I'm going to give us a chance to talk about them if you want to. I'm just going to go through so you can self-check. 4, substitution, yes. Mispronunciation, yes. Repetition, no, is number 5. Number 6 is reversal, and yes, it counts. Number 7 is hesitation, yes, it counts. Number 8 is omission, yes, it counts. Now, do we need discussion about that? What are y'all thinking? Okay, when you look at it, you've got it right in front of you. On number 6. Now that's a reversal. Number 6 reversal is yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, guys, so here comes the part where I feel like I know what we should do, but I also want to ask you. It's a 1-minute video, and if you turn the page, you actually have the text in front of you. It's a 2nd grade student reading for 1 minute to give you an opportunity to actually mark the errors that you would do. Are y'all okay doing this? I have to ask because while I don't know, I haven't heard, and just because the way y'all raised your hands, it doesn't appear to me that this is common practice that y'all do fluency checks. Is that, yes? Am I correct? Okay? Because I don't want to waste your time. If some districts are like, we do this all the time, then we'll move on. But are y'all okay trying one? Yeah? All right. So what you're going to need to do next is get out 14 through 16, and then Frank, what I wanted to do to address what you were talking about. I know some of you have ESL students, some of you are bilingual teachers. There is also Spanish, but obviously for us all to do the same thing, TEA put in 1 and English speaking only because we assumed every one of us could speak English. But that's for y'all's reference to know that there is also other means to check fluency and use Spanish assessments. Okay? So, let's go over this real quick. You're going to listen and mark errors. Don't worry about what they are at first. Just when you hear them and you're looking, mark. Because then you can go back and categorize them. The second thing, pay attention. And this gets really, you know, like anything that you do over time gets really easy for you. Like when I first started reading lesson plans and watching videos, it was so long for me to think about all the indicators in that rubric. And by the time I had done half of them, I'm like, whoop, there's encoding, decoding, there's differentiation, there it is, okay, yeah, I see that one. You start internalizing it. So this may feel a little awkward if you haven't done it, because look at your page and you'll see that not only are you going to mark errors, flip the page to the next and see what it, let me see right here. Oh, right here, yes. And then when you look at page 13, you're going to be marking that as well afterwards. So look at 13 and just kind of see what's on there, because that has to do with the prosody and expression. So you're going to have to, once you hear this child read for a minute, it'll kind of come back to you. But it's a lot to do, but it's very quick. All right, so remember you're marking errors, but without looking up the screen, what else are you listening to? Prosody, phrasing, and punctuation. You're listening for those things so that you can mark them. All right. Then when the student finishes reading, you're going to use your checklist on page 11, and you're going to mark what you see and then summarize it. So you'll be able to calculate words correct per minute. You know how to do that, right? And then you're going to use the rubric to assess their expression, phrasing, smoothness, and pace. And before we even do it right now, do you feel like once you've done this, you're going to be able to more closely diagnose what's the problem? Is it more about fluency or is it more about prosody? Okay? Then you're going to calculate their score, words per minute, and we are ready to go. So, if you want me to do it twice, I will, because it's only a minute long. But get ready to mark your errors, okay?
Put your finger under the first word. Ready? Begin.
I have a pen pal who lives in a faraway place. He lives all the way across the ocean in the different country. He tells me all about what it is like to live in his country. I tell him about what it is like to live in mine. I live in
India.
In many ways, our leaves are very smaller. We both go to...
Stop right there.
We both go to. I think that's as far as she got. Okay, I think this would be really interesting if you'll just stop for a second. And I know you were really focusing on that, but what gets easier and easier is you're being able to pick up on other things. I want you to watch this reader this time. Are you ready? Just watch her. See what you pick up.
Put your finger under the first word. Ready? Begin.
I have a pen pal who lives in a faraway place. He lives all the way across the ocean in the different country. He tells me all about what it is like to live in his country. I tell him about what it is like to live in mine. I live in
India.
In many ways, our leaves are very smaller. We both go to...
Stop right there.
Okay. Did y'all pick up on anything just watching? Did that, the qualitative part that we talk about? Okay, since this is the first time you've done it, I'm not checking, nothing has to be perfect. But did you feel like you were able to mark errors by listening to it one time? Are you good with what you've marked? Okay, so what we're going to do from here is actually just use your documents, okay? Well, we don't have the fluency scores yet, so I'll leave it here. So we need to count how many words she read, and then count how many errors, divide words read correctly by total number, and get her percentage. I apologize, I had you do that really quickly when you didn't yet even get an opportunity to see if you were to count the error. Right? Did I rush y'all on that? Yes, because what those were is like the pause you were told to. Mhm. Okay, I'm purposefully stopping you. This is important. Are you getting different numbers? Okay, I want you to hear me clearly on this. Is everyone going to hear the exact same thing when two people listen to one child read? Okay, here's the deal, folks. We don't need to spend a great deal of time. I got 6, I got 7. What's important is if you both counted it as an error and you marked it, and you can't tell if you're supposed to count it or not. But I want you to think about this. If somebody says there are 4 errors and somebody says there are 9 or 10, that's a big discrepancy that's going to change a student's reading level. 1 or 2 off is most likely not going to, and we need to remember we're human, and we might miss an error. We might miss one. We just don't want to miss a lot so that it greatly impacts their score. Okay? That's going to happen when you do it. Your kids are going to make an error that you're going to miss, and maybe you're going to count something that really wasn't one. But we need to be close at our tables. All right? Are y'all close in the number of errors? Okay, I'm moving us along, but I'm going to tell you what the TEA score said. And so as long as you're close to this, you picked up on what is said you should have picked up on. If you have 1 or maybe 2 different, not that big a deal. The first one was PAL was an error, and the student said POL, P-O-L. The next one was on line 2, or I'll say line 2. A, the student said the instead of a. The third error was country because the teacher had to tell the student what the word country was. Then we go down to the third line. The teacher had to tell the student what the word India was. And then the next error was lives. The student said a couple of words, but then said leaves. And then on line 4, the student said smaller for similar. And then that was it. So this was marked as 6 errors. Did y'all get close to that? Yes? Any questions about, whoa, Jody, that's way off, or are y'all okay? It's the first time you've done one. All right. And since the student here, they said that she read to the word go. That was a total of how many words at go? 63? So, to go, it should be 63. If you went to the word to, it's 64, okay? So here, they said 63 total words, 6 errors, which meant 57 words correct per minute with a accuracy percent of 90. Are y'all close to that? Okay, so we know where this student is with words per minute. So what would this be? If the score is 90, this would be the student's what level? Instructional level. Are we good with that? Now, the next one, take a moment and just talk with somebody about what you were able to pick up on as far as the rubric, which would be y'all's page. It's not my page. Y'all's, it is 13, page 13. And let's go ahead and do this one together. Does anybody want to share what you were thinking up at the top? Anything that you marked there? Okay, I'm going to tell you what they marked. Let's look at the bullets, and I just want you to consider this. The third bullet, we're on page 13, and the third bullet is marked here, where it says shows automaticity on reread words, because the first time she didn't get country, and the teacher told her, and the second time she did. Okay? So after hearing it, she was able to say it the second time. So that box is marked. The other thing where it says other, the very bottom one in the left-hand column, what's listed here is pal, she said pole, live, she said leaves, similar, she said smaller. Just because the teacher wanted to write down the words that the student missed. And then let's go down to the rubric. When you think of expression and volume, where would you put that? And once again, it doesn't, were y'all able to hear her? Or was she very quiet? You know how some kids will whisper, they're so timid. Was she really quiet? Or did she read with some volume? Okay. Did she read with varied volume that shows prosody? Or did she keep it the same? She kept it the same, is what I heard. And so 3 is marked. She read with volume, but she didn't really sound like she was talking to a friend. It was a little bit more robotic. Okay? Let's look at phrasing. What do you think about that one? Yes, I would agree. You said she needs to work on phrasing. I would agree. Phrasing would be a great place to support this student. Which one of those indicators most closely resembles what you heard under phrasing? 1 and 2. What else are y'all thinking? 2? Okay. She did do run-ons, but I will tell you this is marked 1. And she did point to each word and read. You know, you do want to tell them, put your finger on there and start. But don't we want kids doing this? It's a pretty good indicator when they are reading one word. And she did do that, okay? Now, it messed up some other things, and she skipped some of those things sounding like run-ons and punctuation, but she wasn't able to do those. So the indicator that's marked on here is a 1 for phrasing, because if there's phrasing, we know there are going to be 2 or 3 words together. You know, my friend then, or, you know, in their country. But hers would be in their country. Okay? What about smoothness? What did y'all think? These are kind of hard to do, I know, especially the first time you're doing it. Any suggestions? Did you hear her frequently hesitating? I didn't. I heard word. So now let's go all the way to 4. Did she read smoothly? No. So we're down to reads with extended pauses or hesitations, has many rough spots, or reads with occasional breaks in rhythm. I think she had much more than occasional breaks in rhythm, because there wasn't ever really a rhythm, right? It was word for word. So I would agree with this one, and that they scored a 2. Extended pauses or hesitations. And then the pace. Was it slow and laborious? I like to start with the very lowest. Was it laborious? No. So let's go all the way to 4. Was it at a conversational pace throughout, like she's talking to someone? No. So let's look at 2 and 3. Was it moderately slow or fast and slow? Moderately slow. Okay, so let's look at this kiddo. So we've marked Expression and volume as a 3. That would be the strength, right? What would be the place that you would start? Phrasing. And someone said that just earlier, right here. Yes. Say that would be where I would start, where they can learn to maybe just in a sentence how these go together. Let's put these 3 words together. Let's put these 2 words together. Okay? All right, so let's look at the bottom of that. It says a score of 10 or more indicates a student is making good progress. What is this student's score according to our rubric? An 8. A score below 10 indicates they need additional instruction and fluency. And we agreed we would probably start with phrasing. Okay, I need somebody, we're going to stand up and stretch real quick and move to the next thing. But I want y'all to close out for me. How is this different than a screamer? Because she bubbled to the top when we did the screamer. But we're not sure what to do. And we've heard her read and we know it's a little choppy. So we did this fluency assessment. What do we know now about this student? Okay, let's real loud but separate.
Specific areas.
Have we diagnosed specific areas of need and even drilled it down to maybe one where we'll start? Phrasing. What else do we know? What can we praise her on? Let's give her some good feedback. Expression and volume. I mean, there's a lot to work with here. Prosody is both of those. Is intonation and expression, all of it goes under prosody. You know, sounding like a real reader. So, I know I'm asking it again, but how does this feel different than just giving an overall screener?
It's targeting. It helps us target.
It should help us be able to find a place to start. And let's say they were all 2s. That could happen. What do we do? Come on. Y'all know the answer to this. It's your classroom. You just did somebody, they're all 2s or they're all 1s. Where do you start? There's not a wrong answer. I'll give you that big hint.
I might pick an area where
You start what? You just pick one. Will you do me a favor, Natalie, and stand up because you just did what we need to do on our artifact. Say it, sister.
I said that just pick one and maybe if you have multiple kids that are showing a weakness in one or the other, you can do like a small lesson with those kids.
Good. Y'all are really quiet, and you're probably tired, and I've done a lot of talking today, and you've done a lot of sitting and listening. But I know you know the answers to these things. Some of it is maybe something you haven't done before, but I want you to remember that's why I started today just choosing to do that on my own with this group, is because I have found out this from y'all. When things are rocking and rolling, y'all are like, I got this, and you'll even say, hey, that makes sense. I want you to get the big picture from here, that assessments are different for different purposes, and people use them differently. And as a result, students get different things based on how you choose to support or not support. I also want you to know that you don't have to be like me and stay over in that green box. I keep thinking it's green or blue, but like, oh, they're not successful, and you don't know what to do. Okay? We can untwist that rope. And fluency is a great place to start. So, this could be something that you could do. There are many other assessments that we could do as well. But what we're going to do is take about a 10-minute break, and when you come back, I'm going to put sugar on your tables, and we're going to press through the rest of the afternoon, okay? And so you just did some sort of what we would consider a diagnostic assessment. Would you agree? What were you diagnosing for? Fluency, and what specific parts of fluency you might work on to support that student to increase their fluency, right? Because I know y'all probably think I'm so dorky, but I don't care. I'm too old to care. Fluency is that bridge between word recognition and comprehension. So when fluency starts breaking down, we have a problem, folks, right? Okay. We're almost through this, and then y'all are going to get to do an activity where you get up. So let's look at these characteristics. I'm so sorry. I real quickly ate a payday and a peanut went down wrong. I know you need to hear that, but it's stuck. Okay. Compare what you so far think and know about diagnostic to this. It supports teachers in identifying underlying issues impacting student reading ability. Check, Catherine? Yeah? Correct? It did. It helped us know more about this second grade student with fluency. Can be in-depth assessments that cover a variety of skills within a subset of reading in order to identify both student strengths and areas of growth in order to drive individualized instruction or intervention. Now that's long and wordy, but didn't this ORF do some of that for us? We were still able to identify what I would want to capitalize on. This student, I can tell you, and y'all may think I'm corny, I could tell she felt pretty good about what she was doing. This child had not been beaten down to believe that she was a poor reader. I don't think. Didn't she seem kind of, she didn't have good fluency, but she was not this, looking down, quiet. No, she had not been traumatized. She'd had wonderful teachers. And then how she looked up. Remember when she looked up at her like, I think I'm going to need some help with this word. Kind of looked up with those big eyes, You could tell it wasn't a painful experience for her. She wasn't wringing, her hands and stuttering. And to me, that's always a good thing. Because we see that this student who is not on level for where we would want her to be mid-year, second grade, she still has some strengths, and we've identified what we can do to support her. So I would have a lot of hope in knowing we've got a plan, right? And Natalie said it for us. If you're thinking about your artifact and your iStation assessment data was showing you something, and you decided to do fluency assessments, and you're like, oh man, I've got this group, and it seems like it's more of a prosody thing. I've got this one, it seems to be more about fluency. Right there. Or you could have a group, here's their strength, here's their weakness. That's all that artifact's going to be, folks. Okay? Usually made up of many specific mini assessments, and usually only administered once per year after a student does not pass a screening or assessment. Now, it says usually, but a diagnostic test is a true diagnostic test is going to take longer than this. We used this ORF diagnostically, didn't we? But if you do a screener and you see that a student is way behind, you might do fluency for one of the things, but that's not going to tell us everything, right? And a true diagnostic test would give us much more information. Could you not do an ORF as ongoing progress monitoring? How long did that take? Let's be real. If you've done it a few times, how long would it take you to administer an ORF? Not 5 minutes, 2 or 3. You could pull a student a day, but you don't need to do it for all of your students. If they're not struggling with fluency, you don't even go there. Okay, so these are examples of the more formal diagnostic assessments that would give us a lot of information. DIBELS, CPS, TPRI, the DRA, or the comprehensive test of phonological. Those would give us a lot more information. Okay, so you tell me right now, knowing that they're more intense and more comprehensive, what will be a limitation and a benefit? This is good common sense. Time consuming. So it's going to probably take a lot longer, but it's also going to give us more information. There's a give and take. Okay? So clearly, we don't do diagnostic tests all the time. Okay? It's more in depth. So let's look at these. It helps us answer why they're struggling, right? And it identifies strengths and areas of growth, maybe time intensive. Now, what diagnostic assessments do y'all use in your campus or here in your district to really diagnose beyond the screener to do kind of deeper reading assessments? Talk at your tables. Do y'all do something at the district level, campus level, grade level, or in your classroom to diagnose about fluency, accuracy, prosody, word recognition, all of those things in the reading rope? Okay, if I could bring us back in, this is going to be more of a quick walk for you. Obviously, in a day, all of the assessments that we could share with you or that we could let you practice administering, there's no way we would get them done. But we're wanting to give you a sampling of some. So clearly, we had you do the quick one. If you are an ESL or bilingual teacher, I would suggest that you look at one or both, either the TxCee or TPRI. And obviously, if you're not either one of those, that you look at the TPRI, because all I'm wanting you guys to look at is, since this is considered a diagnostic test, let me see how thorough a diagnostic test really is. So right up there in the red, it tells you in your participant handbook what pages to go to for English and for Spanish. And I'm just going to give you about 3 minutes to look through, and I want you to see how much more information is in this diagnostic assessment than was in the ORF. No, in the pack, in your, not the assessment report, but in your participant. Yeah, the thick one, the big one. And it may be interesting if you're a bilingual or ESL teacher to kind of glance at both, see what you think about the English and the TxCee. They're not the same test, but they kind of serve the same purpose as being diagnostic. Okay, have you been able to see that it's much more comprehensive? Yes? No, yes? Okay. So will you turn next to, good, Chelsea's already on it. There's a Venn diagram. We're not going to have to fill this out, but I want to see if we can make sense of what we've talked about. And the Venn diagram is on page 25 of your participant handout. And let's start with screeners. We can talk about it, you can jot if you want. When you're thinking of a screener, when you would use it, why you would use it, for whom you would use it, what comes to mind? Just popcorn it out really loudly. Beginning of the year. Middle of the year. It's quick. Everyone, whole class. What's it going to tell you? Red flags, some possibilities, but are they bilingual or not? That's good. Here's an important answer. Let's say that it raises a red flag and you begin to do other things and you don't see a problem. Oh well. For some reason, something on that screener that kiddo had difficulty with, but you were able to prove it wrong, that the student could do that, and you move on. Okay? Screener once or twice a year. How about when a new student comes in? Diagnostic test. Brand new student. You're going to jump into a diagnostic test right off the bat. What are you going to do? Screen them. Screen. Screen first. Okay? Think about a screen sifting. Okay? First, just do that. Then once you screen, then you can figure out what you're going to do diagnostically. Okay. When you think of just diagnostic, tell me some things that you think of on this side of the bin. In-depth. More time. More answers. Not for everyone. Second step. Right? Okay, what might these have in common?
We identify areas of concern.
There you go. While one may be a little more in depth, they're still going to help you identify areas of concern, right? Also, what could they do? Identify strengths. Can they be used formatively? Should they be used summatively for a grade? That screener, you don't really know it's completely accurate, right, for that student. If you screen them and they look perfectly fine, and then once you put a book in front of them, they can't read, that was a false positive, right? So then we need to rescreen, or maybe the data will tell you, ooh, we need to jump into diagnostic, okay? You get to drive the bus, you get to choose. Okay? All right. So we compared and compressed. Progress monitoring, I bet this is the most simple one for y'all. When do you progress monitor? When? All the time. Is it the same for every student? Probably not. When we think about Tier 2 and Tier 3 that we'll talk more about later, but when you're progress monitoring, you're checking how things are going, right? Sometimes you need to do more checks for some students. So it's tied to student intervention, once again, through RTI, systems of support. You're tracking it, and this is really key that I think sometimes, and I do want to make this point for y'all, you guys. And don't be offended. Students coming to a small group table and reading on their instructional level is not intervention. Did y'all hear that? Come to my table. You're all reading out of the same book. And there are just 5 of us here. That's not really intervention. Because if it's intervention, you are focused on a skill. Now, great if they're reading out of the same book, but why are they at that table? Okay? Remember that, okay? A skill that they need work on, okay? So that's important. Number 2, supporting teachers in tracking student progress in a specific skill. Short assessments, they may be administered weekly or bi-weekly, that's up to you. And only focused, again, on one skill until the student reaches the grade level goal for that skill. Throwing too many things at them. I know sometimes it feels like, but we'll never get there, right? We'll never get there. Well, they're still not going to get there if you work a little bit on this yellow rope and a little bit on this blue rope and a little bit on this yellow one and a little bit on this yellow one, but they never get into the rope, what was the point? But if you work on one and get it in that rope and then work on another and get it in that rope, you will eventually strengthen that rope. But just this scatter shot, today we'll work a little here, tomorrow we'll work a little here, tomorrow we'll work a little here. Scatter shot is not going to get the kiddo where they are. And to be honest, that's what I did. And I did it because I saw whole class areas, but then I put kids in small groups to work on whole class area skills because I didn't know how to identify their individual need. Okay? But we know better now. So examples, you could work on their phonemic awareness, their spelling patterns, letter identification, letter sound proficiency, reading fluency, all kinds of skills you could work on. Okay? But check it out first instead of just choosing one willy-nilly. Okay, curriculum-based measurement. You know what these are? Classroom assessments that you can use. It will check their progress, but even effectiveness. I think it was Monica earlier that said, yeah, sometimes assessments check the student's strengths and weaknesses, and sometimes they check our own. And so sometimes these CBMs can be great for that. How was my teaching this week? What did the kids learn? If overall the kids aren't getting it, it's most likely what kind of a support needed. Maybe an instructional support. What can I do differently because it didn't catch? I need to do something a little differently. Or maybe what you did was great, but they weren't ready for it and you just need to go back. Okay? Examples, again, phonemic awareness, spelling patterns. Do you see the same thing? You can progress monitor for these, or you can write your own CBMs. Not going into these long definitions. Basically what it is the research behind assessing regularly, consistently, progress monitoring has the biggest impact on students getting there, okay? And that's one of the reasons why we want to do this particular artifact, is we want you to look at your data, make an informed decision. Then from there, decide what skills the students need support in, and then create a plan to support them with that skill and track their progress. We've said it over and over and over, but the part to me that's easier said than done is how do we find it, okay? Also, the last one, it helps educators to communicate reading progress to students, parents, and other professionals. Sometimes, I don't know what y'all's process is, but if you're going to an RTI meeting, if you're going to whatever it would be to work with a diagnostician, these are going to be your friends to have the assessments and the reports and the data to back up. This is what this student has done. This is where they're performing. Opinions won't take you very far, but data will. So use it to your advantage and the student's advantage. So here are the benefits, okay? You're tracking a specific skill. Ooh, that was weird. and considerations. If you're progress monitoring a student using a second grade ORF 1 week, try and not look at the screen, try and look down. Try and not look, especially when I told you that, that's hard. But let's say you did an ORF this week on a student, this second grade student, and what we were looking for was phrasing. And you know that you want to work on phrasing. In order to see how that student is doing, what assessment would you use to check their progress? An ORF, right? Remember about being reliable and valid? If this is how they did on the ORF and it showed that the phrasing was having a problem, do that same thing again and see if their phrasing gets better. Do it again and see if it gets better, okay? But changing assessments all the time, and just like you said, sometimes STAR says this and iStation says this, yes. Because we think it's testing the same thing because it's both language arts or both reading, but it ain't testing the same thing, right? Certainly not in the same way, okay? So be consistent in your progress monitoring so that your data can be reliable and valid. Oh boy, okay. I guess I will ask y'all that. I don't want to skip any slides. Take a moment, if you will, and think yourself in your classroom or your grade level or at your campus, what progress monitoring tools do y'all currently have in place? Like, are you going to go back to school and feel like, gosh, if I want to, once I get my small group, I don't know what I'm going to use. Well, you have me, but the people that you have the most are the ones right here that know what else is available on their campus. So I want you to be thinking about the whole reason, and I know I keep saying it, that we're doing this, is that when you go back to create your artifact, and it's not about creating your artifact, but that is your submission and evidence that you know how to use assessments, look at data, and respond accordingly, okay? So if you go back to your campus and you're like, geez, I don't know what I'm going to use. I don't know what I'm going to use if I need to do some type of diagnostic assessment with these kiddos to figure out, okay? Then that's when you're going to need each other and use your coach or your interventionist or your administrators. What do we have available? And use me, okay? But talk right now. What are you currently doing to monitor progress? Okay, this is our last bit of content. We have a video, but this is our last bit of content, and you guys have stayed engaged all the way through. What I'd like for you to do very quickly at your tables, it doesn't have to be exactly even, but I want you to number off, just do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and keep going at your tables, because then you can come back to the same group. So you may have more ones than twos or threes, but right here, you're 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Y'all might be an extra 1 or 2, but number off 1, 2, 3, keep going at your tables. And Monica, do you mind joining that table right there? The 2. Okay? Monica's gonna come join y'all, and then we'll have a 1, 2, 3. Okay, so next if you'll turn to your participant packet, ones, raise your hand or look at me, and you are going to be looking at pages 27 and 28. Am I on the right one, or is it your assessment? Oh, no, it should be here. Yeah, benchmark. Yep, yes. 27 and 28 are the ones. The twos are pages 29 through 32. Telpas, you see that? 29 to 32. And number threes, y'all are 33 to 36. Okay? So will you just star your pages? Number ones, mark your pages. 2, mark your pages. 3, mark your pages. Number 3 was 33 through 36. Okay. Now the first thing we're going to do is I really am going to look at my phone, and it's going to be 2 minutes only for you by yourself in silence, skim through what your pages are, okay? Get an idea of what your 2 or 3 pages are, and we're going to do it totally silently. Everybody know what you're reading? Ready, go. Okay, it's been 2 minutes, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you one direction, and then we're going to move, and then I'll pull us back together real quickly. So let's just do this. Ones, come up here. Twos in that corner. Threes over in this corner. Just, and with your paper, bring your paper, something to write with, and just pop up real quick. And as soon, now I'm going to give you more directions. As soon as you get to your area, pair off in twos or threes. As soon as all of your people get to your area, Sudoku, like this. Stand up, hands up, pair up. Okay, it looks like, okay, we're a 2. We're a 3. That's what you're doing. Find either a 2 or a 3. Stand up, Sudoku. Stand up, hand up, pair up. With one or another person. Stay there so we can see it. Because these guys don't know who theirs is. 2s or 3s. Do y'all have yours? Stand up, hand up, pair up. Now, in that group, kind of spread out where you're standing, but get face to face with your partner or with your 2 partners, but spread out a little bit. So we see groups of 2 or 3 around the room. Okay? Now, if you choose in a moment to go sit down, you may sit down, you may stand up, you may jot here, but this is what I'm going to challenge you with. Anybody can read something and regurgitate a line. I want you to think a little bit creatively. When you read certain things in order to explain it, sometimes it calls for a certain kind of explanation. Sometimes it calls for this is what it is and this is what it's not. Sometimes it calls for almost a metaphor. The best way to explain blah, blah, blah is this. Sometimes just stamping it in a simple, a little diagram, and this is what's key to remember about it. But what we're wanting to know, when you finish this, you're going to go back to your table. And I want you quickly to be able to assimilate the differences between these 3 things. Okay? So you're not going to go back and read from the paper. I'm going to challenge you. Do not go back and read from those 2 or 3 pages. I'm going to give you 8 minutes to talk with your partner and go, this is what they really need to be able to remember. If you want to jot it down, if for any reason you want to come get one of these and jot your notes down, there are lots of these up here in markers, but it's a quick, let's assimilate this and let's keep it simple. Okay? The key idea, if you had to go back and from here to the car, you were explaining to somebody what you read about, that's as long as you have. Okay? I'm going to give you 8 minutes and you may begin. Papers are here if you want them.
There was a lot of interpretation, but I mean, it's just like explaining it. There were go get your answers from practice now. And just the one that really surprised me. I mean, out of all the information, having to go through the process and being evaluated and everything, was for me the part that I remember. And I'm going to is that they can be tested. And I don't understand that. Isn't that what you think? Because when I read that, it said it's equally important to remember that the referral from the evaluation can be considered in kindergarten through high school, but even in first grade, I mean, sometimes it's 20 years. And I don't even know if you can start
You are? I'm not. We do that process.
Well, it's not. That's why I'm thinking, wait a minute. This is like that. This is fine. The school district's not going to be able to do
Well, the one that's over.
and it doesn't say anything on here. It's up to the district. Right?
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
she's the one that oversees that. And then she
I was told the same to decide if it's right for whatever and not have parents who just want to walk away. So the team is officially responsible for keeping up wouldn't you want information? We need the parents. Wouldn't you want to educate them what things could have done for each other? And if nobody ever tells this parent then they're gonna, I mean, it's just something that escapes that.
Okay, if I could have your attention, one more little shift. Where you are right now in your 2s or 3s, in that same group, partner with one other group of 2s or 3s and briefly share what you're thinking. Okay? Put 2 groups together where you are now. Yes. 2 groups together wherever you are now. Share out what you're thinking.
We're talking about students' equal access to the services that they need in public schools and government-funded locations and such. We also talked about, you know, making sure to level the playing field, that it's not access to students who have access, but it's generally speaking, so that they can have access to the activities. And then we'll have fun too.
Is that
Now, when you wear them, someone
Yes, she used to go to Arbor. She called me at Arbor.
with 504?
Yes, tested for what though?
You were there. I was
I think
there.
that has to do with, you have to follow the process, and the process sometimes for diagnosing a lot of academically specialized situations take a whole year. So it's not that they're not going to do it in kindergarten, but it's going to take the whole kindergarten year to do some small groups, and then do some interventions, and then get the reading specialist, and then do, and it's only by the end of the year you've gone through all that they can kind of say, okay, we really think they're friendly and special ed. So it's not like there's a rule that they won't diagnose kindergarten. It's just that it takes a lot of process. Then unfortunately, as a parent, you have to.
That's what we were just saying. I know. That's what I
Once it's in parent, you can't know what you're expecting. But once parents have the writing, there's a legal timeline. And if you can, between the lines,
Okay, last
get a parent to write
grouping.
it, then there's a
If you will please now, in your conversations, I want to give you a moment, sorry, finish your sentence. If you will go back to your table groups, but we're not going to get started yet. At your table groups, 3s, you talk, 2s, you talk, and 1s, you talk. Now, when I see a table that only has 1, 2, and 3, I'll come to you. But most of you have 2 3s, 2 2s, and 2 1s. So go back to your table area. And y'all have about 2 minutes to decide what you're going to be sharing with your table. You should have been able to discuss it a few times. And then y'all have to, yep, you do. So I'm going to ask that you 2 tables come together. So you'll have the 2 3s, the 2 2s, and the 2 1s. Okay? And then you're going to be all prepared to talk. Wherever you want to be, just stand up. But I don't know, the 3s are talking with each other, the 2s are, and the 1s are. And you're creating your plan for what you need to say. Do y'all have a Okay, so here we go. I don't think I need to ask this question, but for the fun of it. This is, Jody, I'm done. And this is, Jody, I've got about 5 or 10 more minutes. This is, I'm ready to go till 4:30. Let me see your hands.
What was the question?
I'm good to go until 4:30. Jody, you got 5 or 10 more minutes. Jody, I'm done. So I'm thinking I have 6 minutes. Maybe? I hear you. And so I'm going with what you said. Here's what we're going to do. The whole point of this, and I think you get it, is when there's heavy content, it's not fun to read it through yourself. And so to have multiple opportunities, I'm just modeling for you guys, for your students as well, to give students opportunities to think, talk, and write. Don't just read and expect them to be ready to present. So we're going to make this fast. Oh my goodness. Okay. So here's what we're going to do to make it fast. 3s. Y'all are going to go first. And you get the option of table leader. Point to one of the 3s. 3s, raise your hand, because we're going to make this fast. I'm going to speed it up. It's going to be speed rounds. Point to one of the 3s. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you 1 minute. You can talk the whole time, or you can say something and then say, does anybody else want to add anything to it? But 3s, you've got 1 minute to describe your topic. Okay? Does the 3 know who's starting? Have you been pointed at? Yes? Ready? Go. Okay, time's up. The person who just spoke, first I want the 2s at your table to raise your hand. I'm calling y'all, catching you off guard. 2s, raise your hand. And the 3 who just shared gets to point to one of the 2s. That person has 1 minute to talk or can share the mic. Number 2, go. Time is up. You know the drill. The number 2 that started now is going to point to one of the 1s. 1s, raise your hand, all ready to share. Okay, have you pointed to one of the 1s? Ready, go. time's up. So guess what? If you'll close down your conversations very quickly, I'm super excited because guess what? I have about 30 seconds or 40 to talk. Decided about 15 minutes ago we are getting out of here early today. I will send you a link later. We are officially done as soon as I tell you thank you so much for pushing through this kind of heavy content. Not something you can't digest, but it's just a lot to do all of those little pieces of assessment in one day, and y'all did a fabulous job. Guests who were here from our fellow cohort, thanks for coming and joining us today. We'll see y'all tomorrow. And as far as leaving things here, please don't leave anything of any great value, but if you really want to leave your handouts where they are, I've been told nobody's using this room tonight, and you guys are dismissed.